Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Allison's Corner. I am your host, Allison, but with me today, I have a very special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm happy to be here. My name is Liana. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a social justice advocate and entrepreneur. I'm based in the DMV area, and I'm also the founder of Black Girls Love Coffee Shops, which is a global social club that we started last year focused on building community for Black women and supporting Black, Indigenous people of color owned coffee shops.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I am a coffee girly, a coffee shop girly. So if I'm not at home, I'm at a coffee shop sipping away or typing on a
Same.
computer. So
Mhm.
when I saw, your nonprofit, one thing that I just loved was like, oh my goodness, this I would be there if I was in the DMV.
Yeah,
So I
we'd
want
love
to
to have you.
thank you. Thank you so much for your work and bringing recognition to underrepresented people. They definitely appreciate it, as I do as well. So, for Liana and for our listeners, we are going to talk a little bit about Black Girls Love Coffee, and we're just going to go more in depth about community building, especially as it relates to Black women. So, Liana, are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, girl. Okay, so our first question is, what inspired you to create this nonprofit and how does it specifically empower Black women?
Yeah, so I was inspired to create Black Girls Love Coffee Shops because I'm a Black girl who loves coffee shops and I work remotely most of the time. So when I'm in coffee shops, oftentimes I'll see not many, but a few Black women sprinkled in the coffee shop. And I'll be like, oh, I wonder what they're working on. Like, I wish we could be friends. Is it awkward for me to approach? So then I had the idea of why don't I create, events and a club where everyone in the coffee shop is a Black woman and like it's open for us to interact and engage and meet one another. Also, I grew up around a lot of coffee. I'm Ethiopian American, and coffee was actually founded in Ethiopia, which is a fun fact that most people don't know. So it's been a large part of my life. And culturally, within our culture, we do a lot of communal practices and traditions around coffee. So it just felt natural to start Black Girls Love Coffee Shops.
Yeah, I love that because it was just something that's already ingrained in your everyday life, and to bring something that's already a part of your daily ritual into another aspect or into another space and make it more communal with other people. I find that very
Mhm.
interesting. I love that. I really do. So you spoke a little bit about your culture and how coffee is infused with your culture and your background. How do you think with doing Black Girls Love Coffee, how that community aspect serves as a central theme in building community?
Yeah, so all of our events are about building community, and we have a variety of different types of events. So we know that Black women are not a monolith. We have a variety of different interests. So we don't just stick to one thing. We have book related events, we have music related events. We have just this week, we had a co working event so people could just bring their laptops and work together in the same space. We have an event coming up around different hobbies that Black women have, and really trying to honor all of the different interests that we have and also maybe expand people's ideas of what they might want to engage in or be interested in as well. So we're all about building community. A lot of people, I'm from the DMV area, so I do have a lot of friends and family because I've been here my whole life, but a lot of
Mhm.
people who recently moved to the area have told me it's really hard to make friends. And I know also that it's hard to make friends as an adult as well. So creating a space where everyone is open to meeting one another and it's not clicky or catty, like is very important to me. So that's what Black Girls Love Coffee Shops is.
Yeah, yeah. What are some challenges that you faced in creating this space for Black women?
So I think one of the challenges was when I started this, I thought it was going to be maybe like 100, 200 people, but we have over 3,500 followers on
Oh,
Instagram now in less than a
wow.
year. So I think it's a good challenge, but that was definitely a challenge to scale up. Our first event, we had like 150 people RSVP, and there's not that many Black owned coffee shops in DC. Surprisingly, a lot of them have been pushed out. And there aren't that many that are big enough to hold an audience of somewhere between like 75 and 150 people. So finding a space can be challenging. Also, a lot of these coffee shops, when we were first reaching out, wanted to charge us for the space, but I do this in a volunteer capacity and I wasn't able to put up the money to be able to rent the space. Now I don't think we have that issue as much because we have a bit more recognition in the city. But those were some of the challenges that we faced initially.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely can understand that, especially when you're just starting out and you're trying to really build a community-based, organization. Trust me, I've been there, so I feel your struggle for sure. For sure. And it's so great to hear how you've been able to scale so quickly. A lot of times it's the opposite where people are trying to get people attracted to what it is that they're doing. So kudos to you in being able to do that. I think that's so cool. Um so, how does Black Girls Love Coffee address intersectionality within Black women's experiences?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I mentioned, we know that Black women are not a monolith. That means that we have a variety of different interests, we have a variety of different experiences, we have a variety of different needs. So, one of the things that I feel very strongly about is asking people what they want to see from us. When we first started, we did an Instagram poll of what type of events people were interested in. At the end of last year, we did an Instagram poll again to kind of check in to see how people were feeling about the events we were hosting. And then, of course, wanting to make sure that it's a space for us, like by
Mhm.
us for us. So when we partner with the coffee shops, we're very intentional about the type of space that we are trying to create, a space free of, like misogyny, misogynoir, no homophobia, no transphobia, no ableism. Like that is not something that we tolerate in our space. And we want to make sure that the coffee shops we align with or that we host our events with are aligned in terms of those values before hosting.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go in a different direction now with the questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about your impact and the programs that you do host. So, what initiatives or programs have been the most impactful in fostering connection with Black women?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard for me to say because we've had so many different types of events. Um, I think, interestingly, to me, it was interesting is that people love the co working events. A
Mm,
lot of people just want to be in space with other Black women at a coffee shop, even if they have their headphones on and they're like plugging away. They just want to be in space together. Another thing that was really popular was our music themed events. So we had a vinyl record swap that people loved. We also partnered with Listening is Fundamental, which is a music sample bingo game in New York City. So we did an event at our New York chapter with Listening is Fundamental and then brought Listening is Fundamental also to DC, which was really popular. Um, yeah, people like a variety of the different events. In terms of impact, what I am most proud of across all of the events is that they've all been hosted at Black or people of color led coffee shops, and we've been able to bring over thousands of dollars in revenue to the coffee shops. We also highlight different coffee shops on our Instagram page, and so that also raises awareness so that people are a bit more intentional about where they spend their money. It's easy to just like get up and think, oh, I want a matcha, I want a coffee, and then think, oh, I'll go to Starbucks, I'll go to Dunkin', I'll go to Compass, right?
yeah.
But if you know what the local Black owned coffee shops are, you're more likely to be like, you know what, let me just walk a little extra 10 minutes and give my money and keep my money in the community. And that's something that I'm really proud of in terms of our impact.
Yeah. And I heard you mentioned you had a New York chapter, so I really wanted to, talk about that a little bit. So tell us, are there multiple chapters across the US? Do you only have a DMV one and a New York one? Let us know.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this earlier. We have a DMV chapter, which is the home chapter that I lead. We also have a New York chapter. We also have a Los Angeles chapter, which is one of our more active chapters, and a Mexico City chapter. So we started four chapters in a year. This year, I think we're focusing a bit more on going deeper within those chapters and less so on expanding. But when we can get our infrastructure set up so that I'm not overseeing all the chapters, that I think will expand even more then.
Wow, I can't believe y'all are in Mexico City. Mexico City, Mexico. That
Yeah.
is awesome. I love that. I love that. Are there any specific stories of transformation or success you'd like to share from the women that have been impacted by your work?
Yeah, I hear a lot, like I said earlier, from women who recently moved to the DMV area that they don't have friends. They're struggling to make friends, especially if they're a little introverted. And our crowd does sometimes tend to be a little more introverted. Um, Unsurprisingly. And I hear from them that they've been able to make friends, they've networked, they meet up with each other outside of our events just to like catch up at coffee shops, or they'll end up like going out on a night out together, for example. In terms of the impact that I've seen for me, I have met so many amazing Black women that I would have otherwise probably never met in the city, just living in my own little bubble, and have been able to meet a lot of really amazing business owners in the city as well, who are committed to the same values that we have of community building and of keeping money in our community. So that's been beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I wanted to talk about the Black culture a little bit. How do our culture, Black culture, those elements really help in your approach to community building?
Yeah, I think Black culture, and whether you talk about, like the diasporic culture, we're a very community centered culture. It's
Mhm.
not in our nature to be very individualistic, which is unfortunately um, the standard here in America. So I think that creating Black Girls Love Coffee Shops felt in line with kind of like how I grew up and how I experienced Black culture when I was growing up and even now. Um, like I said, our events are for us, by us. So when people ask me, like, how do you incorporate the culture into the events? I'm like, I don't know how not to. Like,
We're Black.
we're Black. Like, I can't turn it off. You know what I mean? Not that I want to. But yeah, so we tend to highlight. We had an event that we partnered with a Black trivia group here in DC, and we did Black women's history trivia, which was great. Um, when we do our music events, we highlight Black women artists, and I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, just everything is Black over here. I don't know what else to say. Like, that's how we incorporate the culture. It's for us.
Yeah, and I want to hone in with the organization being based out of DC. The nickname of DC for people who don't know is Chocolate City.
Mhm.
And I can kind of understand why that community space, because you spoke a lot about how some of the Black coffee shops are unfortunately being forced out. I'm from Atlanta and I currently still live in Atlanta. This is where I grew up. And
Mhm.
of course, Atlanta, is known as the Black Mecca.
Yeah,
And as someone who loves coffee, wants to support, small run coffee shops, I also see that same thing happening where I want to go to someone who's a person of color or who is Black. And unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, that's not possible. And so I think also from that aspect of being from a city that is historically Black and being able to just have that community space is even more important, especially with the rise of gentrification. So, yeah.
exactly. You
Yeah.
said, yeah, exactly.
When I want to switch a little bit to coffee and the culture of coffee or of the community space that you're building. How do you see coffee shops in particular being a tool for connection amongst people?
Yeah, so coffee shops are a very unique space. I think because they're not like restaurants where you have to like sit, you order, you pay a certain amount of money to be able to stay in the restaurant space, and then after 2 hours, your reservation's up and you gotta go. A
Yeah.
coffee shop is like a space with less barrier to entry. There are some coffee shops where you can just come and sit and do your work and you don't even have to purchase anything. And there are some coffee shops where you come in and you maybe spend like $4 on a latte and you can stay there all day. So coffee shops are what people call third spaces, which are spaces outside of home and work where people historically used to gather and build community. Now, third spaces are oftentimes online spaces, which has its pros and cons. But in recent years, more people, young people especially, are interested in person third spaces and meetups. So coffee shops are the perfect space for that. I think also I'm very intentional about not having alcohol or having our events be, incorporating a lot of like alcohol or substances because I want to make sure that it's an open space for everyone, including people who don't drink or don't smoke or whatever. Um, so yeah, coffee shops are just like a cozy place. It's supposed to be a place for people to get together over some warm drinks and just have conversation. And traditionally, in Ethiopian culture, but also a lot of other cultures, the gathering spots are actually coffee shops. Like it's coffee shops or it's coffee at someone's house. That is the the mechanism for building community.
Yeah, and I really like that you mentioned it being a third space or a third place. I wanted to ask you, do you feel like the impact of trying to build community through these coffee shops has come through post COVID with everybody wanting and needing connection?
For sure. I think there has been an uptick in interest in in-person interactions post COVID. I think also with the internet age, like people were so quick to be like, wow, you can connect with anyone in the world online anytime. And then now, as things develop, we're seeing some of the negative impacts of the internet and particularly of social media, where you may be connected and on Instagram all day, but when you put your phone down, you don't actually feel like you're connected to somebody versus a 5 minute conversation with somebody at a coffee shop and you actually feel that warmth in your spirit and your heart. So yeah, I think post COVID people are like, please get me out of the house, but I don't want to spend $1 million by going to a restaurant. I maybe don't want to be out till 3 a.m. drinking, so what are the other options? And coffee shops are the other option.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And how has coffee shops helped in shaping your organization's vision overall?
Yeah, I think I've gotten a lot of feedback from coffee shops, which has been helpful. I've also learned a lot. My like eventual goal is that I would love to create a coffee shop and open a coffee shop or a franchise of coffee shops.
Me and you are on the same page.
Yeah, I would love that. So, and I don't really know even what goes into it. So it's been interesting to learn from the owners about like how challenging it actually is to run a coffee shop. It is not easy by any means. And they're, opening at 7 a.m. for people to get their pre work coffee. That means they got to get to the shop at like 5 a.m. So I've learned a lot from the coffee shops. And I also think um, it's been heartening for me to see that there are still spaces and there are still business owners who are committed to building community and committed to, for example, like if we have an event and it's ticketed, they'll say, let's donate 100% of the proceeds to this cause in DC. So knowing that, not all business owners are just out to make money, like a lot of them or some of them are actually aligned with what we want and here for the culture.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. So how do you work to address or try to dismantle any barriers that Black women encounter when you're dealing with a community focused group?
Hmm. Yeah, so we have a I try to focus our events mostly on creating connection, community, and joy, but obviously we have to talk about the discrimination and the challenges that we face as Black women too. We had an event that was wellness focused last year, so we had the host of Black Girl Burnout podcast and a yoga therapist here in DC talk to people about ways to kind of like somatically like calm their nervous systems and more like physical practices for wellness because oftentimes we hear so much about like therapy and other like more, cerebral or like mental practices. Um, and so I think that's one way. Another way is we had the trivia event. The proceeds from that went to N Street Village, which is an organization here in DC that supports women experiencing homelessness. We're going to have another event upcoming next month where the proceeds are going to go towards a organization that supports Black women in an under-resourced part of DC. So I try to incorporate philanthropy into the work that we're doing. But it definitely is a balance. I think that my focus is wanting to almost like create an escape where once you come into our events, you kind of, if you can, leave your burdens at the door, and it's just like joy and love and community to give you the resilience and the spirit to go back out into the world, which is, as we know, not kind to us often.
No, I understand. And I'm sorry about my phone ringing. That was my
That's
dad.
okay. If you can hear any background noise over here, there's a lot of activity.
Listen, my dog just walked in my room. My brother is downstairs talking loud, girl.
I
Do
get
not
it.
recommend.
No worries.
Let's see. So my next question, as far as that is concerned, what are some of your long-term goals that you see for what you're doing now?
So I already mentioned one, which is opening a coffee shop or a franchise. That would be great. If there's any investors listening, hit me up. Uh,
Let them know. Let them know.
because we need the investment. Yeah, besides that, I would love to expand and have more chapters. So people in Atlanta have been like, "Hey, when are you starting a chapter here?" And people have been willing to lead it. I just need to figure out, sort of what the infrastructure looks like to get there.
Yeah.
I also would love to have international chapters, and then maybe trips where like Black Girls Love Coffee Shops, Brazil maybe would like exchange or have host Black Girls Love Coffee Shops DC, and we can go to coffee shops, go to local coffee farms, but then also maybe just like hang out and explore the city together, and it can be like a cultural exchange. That's my hope. And probably something that I'm going to try to implement in the next 5 years. And also, I want us to get merch.
Yeah, listen, speak it all into existence. It's gonna happen. I love it. Future
Yeah.
you already knows. It all they already know. How do you think leading your organization, how has that personally impacted you?
It has been so humbling and beautiful. Like I said, I thought we were going to have like 100 people, and maybe 50 of those would be people that like I knew. And
Mhm.
we have over 3,500 people and growing all the time. People are constantly finding out about Black Girls Love Coffee Shops and being like, I needed this. Like, I didn't know, but I needed this. It just makes me so happy to know that there are other people who needed a space, and now that space exists, and we're able to make friendships. We're able to support one another through hard times, especially in DC. This past 2 months has been really challenging living here. And just being able to walk into the coffee shop on Monday during our co-work and see Black women sitting at communal tables and just like laughing and sharing, stories and helping each other find jobs after some people were laid off from the federal government. Like it just makes me so happy. It brings me so much joy and purpose.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to witness and to experience. So yeah. I wanted to know, what advice would you give to someone wanting to create a positive change for Black women in their community?
Mm. I would say just start whatever it is that you're thinking. Like I always say, if there's an idea in your brain, it's because that thing is already yours. You
Mhm.
just need to act on it. And so I think sometimes we get stuck in the pre launch phase where we're like, oh, well, I need to create branding and I have to create all this stuff, which all of that is really important. But I started Black Girls Love Coffee Shops with a TikTok that I made, and I'm not a marketing person at all. And I had a friend who made our logo, and like here we are now. So
Mm.
I would say don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. It doesn't have to be this huge orchestrated thing. It could just be, hey guys, I love knitting, and I'm starting a club for knitting in my community. Like, if y'all love knitting or want to learn how to knit, come through at this time in this place. And that's so impactful.
Yeah. And my one of my last questions is my second to last one. What legacy do you hope that your organization will leave for Black women and the coffee shop community that you're building?
For Black women, I hope that the legacy is one of taking back the coffee shop space. I think that, like I said, coffee is a part of Black history. Coffee
Mhm.
was found in Africa, and then over time, it's, like everything else, been whitewashed, and now it kind of feels like there are even coffee shop spaces where we're not welcome. And I want us to take our legacy and take our history back, because coffee is a part of our history and our story. Um, Another thing that I would love to see is, through Black Girls Love Coffee Shops, I think that we've demonstrated the power of Black women's money, like our funds and where we direct our funds, um, and shown that there is such a market for coffee shops tailored specifically towards Black women and our interests. So, what I would love to see in the long term within the coffee shop community is, I want to see more Black owned coffee shops. And I want them to be unique, and I want them to be created specifically for like our culture, not just like your standard Starbucks where it's like very cold and,
Yeah.
personality. Um, and that's what I want to see here in DC and everywhere. I want investors to actually believe in people like me, like you, who have a vision and want to create a coffee shop and be like, okay, let me help you make that happen.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Definitely, and it will all come to pass. I truly believe that. Before you go, I my last question for you. I know you're from the DMV area, and I know a couple of our listeners are as well. If you can list your favorite, at least your top 3, maybe top 5, what
Okay.
which ones would you recommend for somebody who is visiting the DMV and they're like, "Hey, I want a coffee today. Which coffee shop should I go to?" No pressure.
This is a political question. People are like, what's your top five? I'm like, I do have favorites though. So I will say Grounded is one of my favorites. It is a Black woman owned coffee shop that opened at the end of last year. They're over in Anacostia in Southeast DC, which is like an area that is underserved, food desert. The fact that they created this is amazing. It's also a plant shop, and they also have wellness classes. So I'm going to be taking Pilates there in a couple hours. I love their space. It's so welcoming and beautiful. I also love The Village, which is another coffee shop that's Black owned in Northeast. Sidamo is another favorite, an Ethiopian owned coffee shop that is on H Street and is one of the oldest Black owned coffee shops in the city, and they're still standing. Um, Trying to think of who else. Bunna Coffee House is another one that I really love in Northwest. And I think I'm going to say those four for now. I'm forgetting some, but we're going to actually be creating a little graphic that has a list of Black owned coffee shops in DC. So
Okay.
folks can check that out in the next couple months.
Awesome. And before you leave us, tell the people where they can find you. Tell us.
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at Black Girls Love Coffee Shops. If you go to our Instagram, please sign up for our email list so that you know when we're creating new chapters and keep up to date with our events. Um, Additionally, we also have a Discord channel, so you can follow the link in our bio to get added to our Discord channel, and that'll allow people to connect with one another outside of just the events that we have. Personally, you can follow me on TikTok at Lienna Feleke-Eshete, and I'm sure the link will be in the bio. But
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. No problem. Thank you. Thank you so much. And for everyone else listening, God bless. Have an amazing day. And thank you for listening to Allison's Corner.